tolerators. This is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, your weekly look at everyday misogyny. Okay, everybody get ready for it. I am so happy today. We have someone on the podcast today who is family, a dear friend, an artist, and the reason why Chris DeRosa is so lucky and probably so nice and kind. We are talking to Hassan Khan, and we're going to be talking about living in a family that was very devout and growing up queer within that family and gender norms and all of it. Because, I don't know, sometimes we're just a very queer podcast and misogyny hits queerness so hard. Hassan, this is going to be so fun. Thank you for being here.
I mean, it's such an honor to be here. I appreciate that introduction. I just want to say, I think Chris DeRosa is definitely nicer because I'm in the picture.
Yes.
However, I feel like I'm more honest because he's in the picture for me. So I hope to bring that honesty to this podcast.
It's a balance. It's a balance.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Chris DeRosa, well, number one, I crashed Chris DeRosa and Hassan's last trip. Well, probably not the last trip that you guys were in LA, but when we went to LA in December, and Chris was like, I'll be in LA in December. And I just went, me too. And I made it happen. So I got to meet Hassan, and I had a beautiful day in the Academy Museum. I think other people were there. Who's to say?
It was truly just us. And that's a lot, because that's saying a lot, because I think later in the evening, Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga were to arrive, and yet we felt like we were the only ones who were supposed to be there.
Yes.
And every single turn of the John Waters exhibition, we're like, oh my God. I'm like, this explains why I'm so queer?
Yes.
I don't know, like, all the John Waters references and the inspiration that he gave to a lot of other people's works.
Yes. Well, I was just watching, so I've been rewatching a lot of Drag Race because I'm currently in an area where I haven't enmeshed myself in the queer community. And so I was like, I miss drag. I used to go to drag brunch once a month. And so I was like, I gotta just be watching Rue, I guess. And they just did the John Waters episode. And it is so... Because I was a kid watching John Waters, like not actually understanding the type of culture that I was coming into. So then to put that all full circle on a trip to California that I myself invited myself to, and then told everyone this is for my birthday. I don't know why you all showed up to California, but I did for my birthday.
Hey, we love to celebrate.
We love to celebrate. But yeah, I love that exhibit. I love Hairspray. I love Cry Baby, despite Johnny Depp now. Yeah, Divine, all of it.
I feel like the interesting thing about that experience for me and reliving John Waters at a museum for the Academy, it was like realizing that a lot of these things I watched either in secret. I had my finger on the button to go back to another screen in case another channel in case someone walked into it, and observing other culture. Like at the time, I didn't even feel like I could be these people, but it was so curious to me that I was like, I felt othered. Now I go and think about that person watching it when I was younger, and it's like, oh no, like I was taking a peek into the window. Like it was a peek into the window before I walked into the house, and I didn't even know that was where I was going at all. Like it was just, even, growing up in a Muslim family, it is not something that people take lightly. However, there are gay people. There are so many queer people. There are people who are trans. I don't know if they all identify as Muslim, but there are people that I've known that have identified that way. And it was just, it's such a weird thing to watch things like that, and to be an immigrant, because my family came to the country in the early 90s, and I was born in Pakistan, and I came when I was like a 9-month-old. And, I guess John Waters is the shoehorn for what we're talking about, which is like just queerness and like seeing that kind of stuff. All of it that was not Pakistani or Muslim was deemed other and deemed as you observe, you never absorb.
Yeah.
Like that was the way it was taught to me. Like, hey, like we would, watch MTV, and like I'd only get to watch it if a friend came over, and like they asked my mom, "Hey, can we watch this channel?" And I'm like, "Go ask her to watch the Spice Girls, please." Because if I said it, she'd be like, "What are you doing? That's like, blasphemy or something." Or yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So give us a little more background about your family and the area that you immigrated to and where you kind of grew up in the United States. Because geography plays a huge role in that
Totally.
experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up with like myself, my mom, my father, who like left when I was in early high school, early teenage years. And then I had a brother and I have a brother and a sister. And we grew up in the armpit of the world, like New York City, New Jersey. It's literally like my family is a classic immigrant family. Like I have currently family that I have lived that live in Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island, Staten Island, and New Jersey. And so we've just kind of done that entire scope. However, growing up, my father kept us the furthest away from our family. And I don't know really why the intentions are behind that were, but it let me be around a lot of other people growing up. I'd say to about like 12 that were not really Muslim. Like, or they were just, I lived in a neighborhood that was full of immigrant families. Like, some of my closest friends growing up until I moved from there were from like Laos. They were Russian. One of the families was like an Egyptian family that was like, so I grew up with all these different families that were different from us, and we never really talked about it. I also grew up in a family that wasn't really religious. And I think it's because my parents, I love them. I loved having them, but they were like, we're not raising you. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. Go figure out how to become the doctor. Go figure out how to finance the rest of our lives. Like, they didn't give me a runway. They didn't give me the structure, I think, that I see a lot of other parents give their children as an adult. Like, my mom never sat with us to be like, get your homework done. Can I help you? It was kind of like, you're getting A's, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I had a very similar experience. My sister and I were talking about this at dinner on Saturday. And she was like, the wildest part about mom and dad was that they didn't want to hover over us until it mattered. Like all of a sudden they're snatching our report card and like, where did this B minus come from? I feel like you could have been better. She goes, but the day to day, like the asking if your homework's done. What do your classes look like? What are your interests? My sister came home with like a portrait drawing from an art class. My sister took a bunch of drawing classes in high school. And my mom found one day and she's like, who did this? And Emily's like, I did for a class. And she went, when did you learn how to draw? She's like, well,
Yeah.
and it's so, I feel like that's a very big our generational thing where like all of a sudden our parents were like, we can't handle jobs and emotional intelligence and you kids. And like my mom personally was like emotionally and mentally exhausted due to some other life things and marriage things that we didn't find out until we were older.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, because I feel like it normalizes like even just it coming from the lens of being an immigrant. It also comes from a lens of like financial stability. Like I'm not sure whether your family grew up wealthy or not, but my family, we struggled. Like oftentimes, like my mom was the only breadwinner after my dad left. And so she couldn't carry all that weight. And with that being said, I never said I needed those things to her. Like those were not needs that I even knew how to express. It just makes me wonder. I don't even know if I want to go down that road, but like, who would I be if I had that stuff? Like, it doesn't really matter because I love who I am now and I love the life I've got to build. And it all came from the way that my mom did raise me, or the way the structure my mom gave me. Like, I'm an independent thinker. I often get told at work that people love the way that I think because sometimes it's not the same way that everyone else around me does.
Yeah, on my worst days, I do walk down that road where I'm like, what if I had grown up thinking that I would be good at any job, and instead I believed that I was good at nothing because no one was telling me that I was good at anything. So I was like, what do people who have like no fancy skills do? And then I settled on I'll be a teacher to children because I can talk a lot and I know how to read.
And I mean, those are the things that were centered around you. But I would also say that like you would offer such a safety to the children And I think that is such an important thing to give to children as they get older or as they're living through life and exploring and being curious. And those are some of the things that I feel like can be rephrased in what we're saying is that we had a safety to explore, but sometimes it wasn't met with like encouragement or curiosity as to why are you into that? For me, oftentimes, like when I was really into music, my family was like, "That's the devil's work. Like you can't be doing that. Don't be listening to that." Like, my mom and my dad never really cared about artwork for me either. And as an adult now, I realize that's one of the reasons why I never really pursued it. And, a couple of years ago, or almost two, I'd say, I was just dawned on myself. I was like, I have an adult money and I can do anything I want with it. Like during the pandemic, I taught myself how to do oil paint. And that's because one of my art teachers in high school was like, "Hey, we can't really use this in class. I love the work that you do. Take all this paint." And she gave me like 20 tubes of paint and I carried it around to every place I ever lived, not using it. Chris DeRosa himself has moved it from apartment to apartment for me. And then during the pandemic, I just stared at them being like, I guess I'm going to do this. But it was so nice to return to something that you really enjoyed. But to circle back, or just to kind of put a cap on it, I think it was one of the things I never really explored because I don't think anyone around me really cared about it. Like I love doing it. And I think as a child, I wanted people to want me to like do it more because I was so used to everyone else validating everything else that I was doing, being a good brother or being like, I don't know, a devout Muslim, a good Muslim or a good kid, or feeling like you were a good friend. It's like those things didn't feel the same way when I was making art. And I think that's such a simple way of kind of describing it. I'm sure there's so many layers to it, but as an adult returning back to it, I mean, I painted on the island. For those, I don't know if we said this, but I'm in Kauai. So it just feels lovely to be out here. And I told myself, I'm going to teach myself how to watercolor. I made a couple watercolors when I was growing up and I never really explored it. It's kind of a really finicky medium. And I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to come out here. I'm going to use some of the Kauaian water, which feels poetic,
Yes.
and put some color on paper. I'm just going to put marks on paper. That's how I see it. That's the only way I can get it through that. Otherwise, I get too much in my head and I never really want to do anything.
Are you the oldest child? Is that why we have such oldest child energy? Yeah, look at us.
I am 100% the oldest child.
um, I so taking these screenwriting classes that I've been taking, I watch so many people get bogged down on like, how do I make sure my idea is worthy? How do I make sure that my log line is perfect? How many things go into an outline? And I put in because all of these are online, so I put on in the little group chat. I was like, "Hey everybody, I'm on like year 4 of trying things that I never thought I'd try." So I tell myself every time I sit down to write something down that like this is all play until someone wants to pay me for work. Like, and that's kind of been my motto. Like your outline honestly gets to look like what your outline looks like.
You honestly hit it on the nail. I think it is all play. And I think when people think this is like their next big screenplay or this is their next big piece that they're going to sell, or already ruined it. Like Rick Rubin came out with that book, The Creative Act, and it's next to my bedside. I read it very slowly because he's so hippie. He's like the epitome of like, he like did like, I don't know. I think he was like the CEO or the head producer or something at like some music label, and I'm having a difficult time remembering it. But essentially, he's really accomplished. Was responsible for like, I think like no, what's the brand? What's the band? Red Hot Chili Peppers. Like he's worked with Kanye West and like all these like big names and helped them create. And then I was reading it, and he said, "I'm not a musician." And like I was like, okay, like this is an interesting perspective. And all this to say, one of the things he says is like, you're never making anything. You are just making a journal entry. He's like, if you ever think it's more than a journal entry, and that word journal entry is vague enough to be anything, he's like, if it's ever more than journal entry, you already killed the idea.
Yeah.
You're not making your number one hit. You're not making anything like that. You're literally just making a journal entry because guess what? When you don't like it, you can turn the page and start over again. It's something that's precious.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had an art teacher once that like made us paint something and then made us all rip it up afterwards. Just to be like, hey, like, you can make this again. This thing that you just made isn't the only thing that can, it's you're the creator, right? Which is so interesting. I mean, like, we're leading into the conversation the way I kind of want it to go, whereas like talking about creator, the higher power of God and Allah, like, it's something that I feel like as an adult, I'm constantly like working my way through it. And my relationships a lot of have been defined by religion. I think that's a common practice as people who grew up in America or people who grew up in religious families. Like, your identity often includes that layer of it. And, you know, for all intents and purposes, if my family's listening to this, I am a Muslim because they have made it pretty clear that if I ever denounce that, that their love for me is conditional and it may change. And that's really fucked up. So I'm just going to say that on record so they don't ever think that whatever I say after this doesn't feel like I'm questioning my faith in Allah, because it's uncomfortable to even think about it that way. It's also fear-based religion, in which I don't like. And I've said this to them multiple times. Whatever problems you have with me and the way I'm behaving, the way that I am, I'm going to meet my own maker and I'll have that conversation with him. You don't have to carry that burden.
Yeah. What did so in my house growing up, like I was a kid growing up with my mom has a huge family. Like her side of the family is huge. My grandfather was one of eight, and like everyone stayed in that area. And so like of course I have gay cousins, and of course now I am a gay cousin. But it was always treated as like one of those things that we know, but we like, but you can't make a big deal about it because it's going to make like dad uncomfortable. Like, we don't talk about what Johnny's doing with his partner at home and whether or not their life is lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's really funny because it's like, I guess for my family, tolerance was something I had to teach them. My mom comes from a big family too. I just want to say that she's one of nine. And my dad's side of the family, I think he was like one of six or one of seven. I didn't ever really got close to a lot of them. And mind you, like, my family immigrated here, so half of her siblings were on another continent, another time zone. There's so many people in my family that I've yet to meet, slash they've only ever held me as a child, as a baby.
Yeah.
The back of my head is so beautiful because my mom said that was never put down,
Yes.
so it never had a chance to get flat. So I was very loved, but all this to say is that like I told my mom one day that I was the gay person that we know of. No one else had a chance to ever come out. Like, I feel like it's one of those things where it's so nice to have other gay people in our family or in your family, I'm sure, because you have a chance to kind of connect, and there's a way to, you know, have deeper bonds using empathy and understanding perspective. However, like on my side of the family, I was the only one. I often feel like I am the black sheep. I'm the one who, I don't know, does everything the way that I want to. How, with that being said, I think my siblings also are becoming their own identities and doing things on their own that they like. And I'm not here to question that because I've done that stuff already, where I was like, you know, you have your own will. You're able to do your own things.
Yeah. When we were talking about, well, number one, we were supposed to be talking about Southern Christianity, specifically with my friend who lives in the South. And instead, I had like a religious trauma spiral. And we ended up talking about my recovery in Catholicism. And I told my friend, I was like, I think God and my dad convinced me accidentally that I shouldn't date women, but they like never said it out loud. Like, they just convinced me it would be bad.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's exactly how I felt too. As a gay person or as a queer person, I identify as queer, I think. I even also feel like I grew up in a way like that I explored being with women and almost prayed myself straight in a way, like wanting that experience and also not letting that letdown happen. It was such a that is very similar regardless of faith. I think, I don't know, like I've tried, and then like the reason I came out of the closet was like the person I was dating, I couldn't love her the same way that she loved me, and it was hard.
Yeah.
And that caused me to have to be introspective. I also was taking like a gender, race, sexuality class with this really, really like, let's just say he was just serving cunt the whole time in class. Like, he had this beautiful pout. he would like hold his hand to the side and ask us what do you guys think? I want to hear what you have to think. Like, tell me. And we're like reading books, and it was like, I think it was like English and gender or something, or that's what the class covered. And it could have just been an English 101 class. God knows what it was. But this professor was really a part of my like journey with it because I think he made us read Running with Scissors. And like, that is a queer book in itself, although he doesn't really talk about being gay. He grows up in a family that's so unstructured, and it's something that he explores later because he never really had the place to explore it when he was younger. He was just being himself.
Because that's very much how I feel. I feel like I was like, you have a childhood, and technically every day is a playground, and like my parents were saying, like, no, you can't hang out with the gay kids in class because, like, I mean, appearances. No one in nice people, Middle West white people communities are going to actually say, like, oh, no, we don't like the other people. They're just instead going to, like, inherently, like, let you know that, like, but those people are, like, different, and that's not how we behave. Hey, just so you know. But you can still, like, go to prom with them if that's what you want. Like, it very much felt like that's how I grew up.
Natalie, know that like you can say hi to them and you don't have to be mean to them, but we are not like them.
Exactly. No, honestly. And because I think like in white suburbia, that's a huge part of like the underlying culture. I believe that we have a movie called Get Out that explores this way better than I'm going to, where it's like the whole thing is like no one's saying anything out loud because they know that they're not allowed to say anything out loud. But like everyone is concerned that you're watching RuPaul's Drag Race. Like people are like, why do you want to watch that? And I'm like, because it's so much fun. And they're like,
And
oh,
it's
okay.
funny.
And it's funny.
Oh,
RuPaul is so funny.
you know why you want to watch RuPaul's Drag Race? It's because, or another way of putting it, you are on the precipice of culture. Like a lot of the stuff that we say, it all comes from drag and queer culture. Like, and it's so funny because it's like, yeah, you want to watch it because you want to know the roots and you also want to feel like you understand and you relate. And guess what? You have a place in there too. It's not like it's just meant for certain people. And it's like people who are like, why are you watching that? It's like, yeah, because I relate. Like the way that I came out to my mom was she was like, why do you want to go to Pride? Why do you want to go to like a Pride like march or a Pride parade? And then I literally said to her, well, it's because I feel like I'm part of that. And she had a hysterical meltdown, but that's literally the way I had to tell her because she wasn't even interested in knowing why I have these kinds of friends. And like going back to what you were saying about friends, like earlier, there's like so many interesting signs of me growing up being around queer people, but I never felt like I could be in the water with them or in the pool. I was always around the pool. In the middle of high school, I moved from Queens to across the river in New Jersey. And I went from being a popular kid in high school to going to a school where my graduating class was 800. I call it corporate suburbia. It's not trademarked. I would like to get some
A lawyer, please.
yes, I need a trademark on it, but it's corporate suburbia. Like my graduating class was 800 people, and that was one of the grades. And I was so depressed from leaving a place where I had built all these friendships. I felt like I was very confident where I was, and I'm going to a place where everyone knows each other already because they all grew up around each other. And so immediately I ended up sitting with people who were all the weirdos, outcasts. Like my one friend that I became close to, um, he came back as Jack that year. And like over the summer, had this transitionary phase of life and understanding. And like, I remember people coming up to me being like, why do you want to sit with, and like, they're going to misgender and be like, her. And I'm like, that's Jack. And also because Jack is cool. He's an artist. He makes sick stuff. And I was just one of those things where I never really thought about like even having a trans friend in high school. I was like, I think turning 16 that year. And like in hindsight, like that's a pretty young age to have someone you are really close to and being a trans person. And it's like we didn't even think about it that way. Although we didn't have the language to, I think, at the same time. RuPaul's Drag Race wasn't on TV yet. Everything was so homophobic that you didn't even think about things being transphobic yet, right?
Right. I I also remember just being an adult, like in my second school of teaching. So I've been like an adult on my own for 4-ish years. And one of my queer friends going, you know, the reason why you fit in so seamlessly with queer culture is because you're queer, right? Like we're going to figure that out within the next 5 years. And I looked at her and I was like, I'm not cool enough to be gay. What are you talking about? Like, I'm just a person. It was like when my friends would all be in the musicals at school or in show choir competitions, and I would go to support them, but I was not on stage. I wasn't cool enough to be in the musical. I am just a supporting actress to my queer friends. And she's like, okay, all right, that's okay. I was like, I'm just
You're
the
the hype
perfect,
person.
yeah, I'm just a perfect hype ally. I don't know.
I feel like that's similar to how I felt. Like I had, so in high school, I had two friends that were on and off again lesbian lovers. And one of them had just moved to the town too. So we bonded over being new people. We bonded over being artists. And then she started dating this woman. And I'm just going to use her real names because chances are I don't know if they follow me. Anyway, Cheryl and Heather were like always on and off in it, on and off again. Heather came from a Catholic family and her dad was very homophobic about it, and it was so much drama. But I was there as a support system. I was part of the gay straight alliance. It's like all these things, but I was part of the straight part. And I think it's because I was always afraid of coming out to my own family and dealing with the own trauma of realizing that this is something that I'm gonna have to deal with. And like, you know, just to fast forward to life now, like I'm on this island living my own life with my gay parents who are two interracial gay men in their 80s who have lived in New York since the 70s. They've invited me out here. And at the same time, Chris, my lover, took my mom out to open her fast this past Sunday. I wasn't even there. So it's like my full life, there's so much layers to it. It's like, you know, he is my lover observing Ramadan with my mom. Like that's so cool, and I can't believe young me made that happen.
Yeah. No, that's monumental. It's beautiful.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's I feel like the feeling or the sentiment that's coming to the surface right now is like I think growing up we're all forced to keep these identities separate. And even when I came out of the closet, I wasn't a gay Pakistani man. I was Pakistani and I was gay. And as an adult, I'm like, you know, it's everyone else sees me that way, but as an adult, I'm getting old. I'm combining them more and more and more, and it's just so interesting because it's like, I don't know, like it's freeing. Like let's just put it that way. It's almost like you're relaxing your shoulders. You're like these are all the things that can happen together, and I don't know. A lot of it comes from teaching people. Like before before Chris, when I first came out of the closet, a year or two into it, I had to tell my mom how to talk to me. I was like, stop asking me if I'm going to hang out with those people, mom. We're not those people. We're just people. And mind you, we're speaking in Urdu, so it's not even English. She's like, and I'm like, no, like you need to stop saying those people because we're just people. I'm hanging out with just my friends. They're not my gay friends. They're not those friends. They're just friends. And it's like those little moments were really challenging for my mom to even observe and hear, but it definitely changed the way my life went, and it also set her up for how to experience having a lover that she loves, you know.
Well, and I just think of how much like resilience your mom had to have when you were growing up, like immigrating, a new country, new languages, new people, your dad leaving. And I always think about like my parents' resilience too. And it's like this is the one thing that's gonna get you down. Pronouns. You've lived through so much and now you're like, what if pronouns change and we have to change the chart that we all read in the grammar book? Okay, that's gonna be the one thing that puts you over the edge.
You know, on the sidebar for pronouns, and this is for anyone listening, anyone who tells you they don't want to observe pronouns, start misgendering them right to their face. Because then you can be like, well, listen, if you don't like to follow pronouns, then I don't like to follow pronouns. It's fucked up to misgender people, but you know what's powerful? To misgender the people who don't want to acknowledge that they're doing it in a way that hurts people. And it's going to make sense to them because you're going to be like, hey, I'm going to start calling you she, knowing that you would prefer to be called he, just because you don't really care if other people feel that way. And it will change the conversation so much.
I'm going to start calling you baby girl. That is your new pronoun because Kendrick declared 2025 the year of the hater. I signed my name right under his. I was like, oh, we're signing up to be haters? Done. I've been waiting for my mean girl tendencies to get a resurgence and a renaissance. And I am. I'm just going to start being mean to conservatives and people who say ignorant things to me on purpose because they're just like, I don't want to change. Okay. That's so. You're going to make me fight you in this very crowded convention center because you want to know why I put she, her, hers on my badge. I'll fight you, but I feel like we could be doing other things.
Literally. No, you're 100% correct. It's like everyone has issues with everything that like is so minor. And I'm like, the person who wears the tin hat is like, hey, like this is a divergent way of this is a way to commandeer our attention.
Yeah.
From the actual matters. Like people who are upset about the trans legislations, the anti stuff, I'm very upset about that.
I'm very upset.
But for the folks who are like, oh, this needs to be discussed. We need to understand trans people in sports. We need to understand this. I want to be like, do you know there are children who are hungry that are not trans right now or queer? They're just children.
Yeah.
Blanket. They all fit under the same umbrella term. They're all hungry. They don't have finances. They don't have supplies for school. Like, why aren't we talking about that rather than talking about the 1.01% of students who happen to be trans who want to play sports? Like, that is such a huge thing that we have been discussing. And I'm like, I'm just so sick of our society being obsessed with people's genitalia. It's like disgusting. And it's not new. Like, I get it. We've always been obsessed with it, but it's just like it's so overwhelming.
And so the pronoun thing is a very clear cut way that people will show you that they're ignorant and prejudiced when they are just like, I don't want to do it. Why do I have to learn someone's new name? And I'm like, and I think this is why I'm so stubborn about giving my nephews nicknames. Like I've got Tater Tot, he just turned 2. And then I got Little Squish, and he's going to be 6 weeks on Friday. And my mom was like, your grandma Peggy hated that your grandpa's family gave everyone stupid nicknames because they did. My grandpa's nickname was Bushy. My great uncle's nickname was Chokey. My great aunt's name was Suni. And like I was 13 when I learned all of their real names. But you know what? I did it. I was like, yes, Grandpa Bushy's real name was Matthew. And technically my mom did it too. But this whole thing of like, I refuse to learn your new identity. I was like, that's it. The children will have nicknames. I'll change those nicknames every week based on my mood. My sister, because of how the baby's hair will lay every once in a while, calls him Little Theo Danny DeVito or Theo DeVito or something because he has Danny DeVito hair.
So funny.
That's so funny and it's so adorable. And they all get theme songs because it's so ridiculous to just be like, I can't call someone else another name. And it's like, why you called me 4 to 5 names growing up? Like, what are you talking about?
So if we're going to talk about names, let's get into mine. So I had a really interesting experience in 2022 when I came out to Hawaii in this literal space, this entire room. This is my 7th time here, which is insane to say. I never thought that would have ever happened. So,
I'm crashing your 8th time. You're going to be like, I'm going to Hawaii. I'm going to be like, sweet, me too. Let me know what island.
I mean, I think I realized on this trip, on my 40th birthday, I want to have like an open invite, just get a massive house, invite people and just stay here. Like I come here to pretend like I live here. But I wanted to get back to what I was saying, which is like, during the pandemic, 2020, 2021, I think a lot of people had to stop performing in general. Like, I think a lot of people came out as trans because they realized, oh, I'm performing gender every day and I don't have to in the comfort of my home, that I never get to leave for 2 weeks straight or be around other people to actually have to experience that. I realized that a lot of the core people, my mom, my brother, my sister, my sister calls me Baijan, but um, mm, I've had different names, and a lot of like in, I guess, Eastern culture, a lot of your name depends on who you are and how you relate to that person. So my mom's side of the family, all my aunts are called Kala. But if my aunts on my dad's side of the family are called Popo. So it's like, depending on what I'm saying, you would know who I'm talking about if I said that. And that's kind of like how people call grandma and grandpa and grandmother and grandfather. I don't know if that's a good way of making it. But like, you don't call both your grandparents sometimes the same names, right? So I came out here and I used Hassan, which is like the way that you would pronounce my name if you're speaking Urdu or if you're a South Asian person. And I used it, and guess what? All the white people learned it. All I didn't say my name was Hassan, and whenever someone said my name was Hassan, I was like, no, it's pronounced Hassan. It's Hassan if if you were Muslim and living in maybe, I don't know, France or England. Like if if you were speaking English, that's how you would probably say it. But like, no, like this is my name. And so I came back and I used it for a while, and like it made everyone in my real life kind of really confused about it. And I think for me, it was a little bit of a confusing thing too, because like it was a way of me recognizing and understanding that like, oh, I always used Hassan growing up everywhere, but my family always called me Hassan. Anyone who was South Asian called me Hassan, and the way it started was I got my teeth cleaned, and it was going on this trip, and my doctor called me Hassan. I was like, "How the fuck do you know my name? Like, who are you? You're clearly not Doctor Farag, who was the other person." She was like, "Oh no, it's Doctor Rupa Patel. Shout out, Doctor Rupa Patel." She was like, "It's me, Rupa Patel. I haven't seen you in a couple of years," and I was like, "Oh, that's why you know I'm Hassan, because you're a brown person. Like, you know my name, and you've probably have known other Hassans before." And I don't know. It's just one of those things where now I just go by Hassan because like it's the way I feel. Like it's like saying chocolate and chocolate, I guess, if you're speaking another language, if you're speaking, I guess, Spanish. Um, so that's the way I feel like my name is pronounced. My old roommate, Samantha, Sam, she asked me one day because she was working on the Hassan Minaj show. She came home one day and she goes, "Do you go by Hassan or Hassan?" And this was before all this happened, before the pandemic. And I was like, Sam, like, that's so funny because this is how it works in my family. Like, I am Hassan, but my family calls me Hassan. My family, so Samantha asked me one day after working on the Hassan Minaj show whether I go by Hassan and Hassan. And I was like, very much like, you can call me Hassan. I really don't care. Like 2 years later, I'm doing the exact opposite where I was like, I like the way people are saying my real name. Until people I work with and the people I work with that I love overlapped. They started calling me Hassan, and people at work were like, "Am I saying his name wrong?" And now it became this whole thing. And every single offsite that I went to, I could see the dread in people's eyes before I walked up to them to figure out what name I'm supposed to use. And so it became this huge thing where I kind of felt like it didn't feel good enough. It didn't feel good anymore to use it. And so I kind of just go by Hassan now. I also feel like it's one of those names where maybe it's the ones that are close to me that get to use it. It's not the identity that I want to present out to the world. Um, I'm really grateful to kind of have that weird journey of understanding the way that I want to be called because I didn't grow up with pet names. I grew up with Baijan, which is what my sister calls me, which means like older brother that I love. My brother calls me Hassan Bai, which is brother Hassan. My mom calls me Hassan. And all my other cousins called me Hassan Bai, which is brother Hassan. And then I don't have any nieces or nephews, but they would all call me different names depending on what side of the family I fall on. However, all my cousins on my dad's side, all their first names are Muhammad, which my mom fought against for me. And so they all have pet names. My cousin Honey, Moon, that's their name that we use. And like growing up, I realized that they all had the same first name. And that's why and I didn't know that, I didn't know that until I was an adult. I was like, oh, Honey's real name isn't Honey. His name is Muhammad Tufel, like what? But it makes sense. They all have the first same name. So they all had pet names, but I never had that.
Yeah. And well, and my nephews have like, I don't know, 80 grandparents. I think the actual total is eight. If I have to, it's
Oh my God.
seven. They have, yeah.
That's so cute.
Because, divorce and blended families. So, like, I remember when my sister was pregnant with my first nephew, and then, like, we had to have the talk, like, what's everyone going to be called? And then my mom picked Gigi, and we're like, that's because my mother loves to be youthful and loves to believe that she is still sucking down the fountain of youth and whatnot. And we're like, that's perfect. No. And then, like, we've got Grandma Bunny, Grandma, I'm Aunt Nanny. But yeah, it's like you have to call these people. My aunt's grandkids call her Mama, which I believe is the last thing she wanted to be called, but it's what the older one ended up calling her because kids just say things weird. So she's like, well, and that's what stuck. Like,
That's so cute though.
I know everyone's cute. And my aunts and uncles, like, I just feel like there's such a difference when someone's asking you questions out of love and care and when someone is trying to like bait you into their ignorance. I remember the night before my sister's baby shower that one of our family friends, their eldest child, was going through a gender transition. And even I was like, I kind of knew because my mom was giving me updates about it, but I didn't know. Even when I showed up at the baby shower, it had changed again. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I stay with my aunts and uncles a lot for family functions. And my aunts and uncles were just eating pizza. And all of a sudden, they're all staring at me. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we were wondering if you could teach us how, like, what their correct pronouns are, like, and what we should expect tomorrow when it comes to like names, identities, and kind of like where they're at in their process, which is because they're like, because we've loved them since they were a baby and it's the first time we've seen them as an adult in a while. So I would hate to be the reason why they don't come to family functions anymore. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is everything I've ever wanted.
I
Just
know, literally.
like
That's such a dream. It makes my heart so warm to hear you share that. You know
like my
that?
family just didn't want to be ignorant for once. That's so nice.
And I would say that they just want to show that they love the person. Like ultimately they know that like saying the right thing to them, like the statement, like everyone loves to hear their name. Like that's one of everyone's favorite sounds, like as a child or as a like anyone's pet, they love to hear their name. And so I feel like that's what I'm hearing you share is like them being like, we know we want to make sure that they use the right ways to refer to them. And that is so touching because you know what? Not every adult acts that way, as
No.
we know.
Well, because I also have adults in my life who, when this person is brought up, it's like battling through the things that we've already talked about 20 times over because it's like, is this real? And I'm like, at the end of the day, I don't care if it's real or a phase or a fad or whatever. It's what they're choosing to do right now. And I can adapt.
Period.
Like, I'll just adapt to the next
Literally.
thing.
Also let them. Like I think that it's so nice to explore and I wish that like more people had space to do that. And I don't mean explore, I mean explore in general.
Hmm.
Ideas and thoughts and careers or I feel like it's so strange that we live in a society where I'm supposed to know by the age of 18 what I want to do for the rest of my life when the conversation really should be fixed to what do you want to do for the next 4 years?
Yeah.
You know, I feel like it's just one of those things where like we let people be themselves, and guess what? They're not going to hurt themselves because like that's ultimately I think the saddest part about all this is that people who feel shut out and not able to explore often hurt themselves in ways that is like I don't know. I'm just gonna say it, like trigger warning. Like it is often like hurting their own bodies in ways that we can never be with them again. And it's sad because there's so many, I feel like people who are queer, we are the ones who think differently. We are the ones who, innovation breeds ideas. Innovation of ideas breeds new thought. Like I think thinking about things and being different causes things to be questioned. Tradition is so boring, you know? And queer people are the first ones to A, start new traditions and be like, well, that doesn't really work.
Well, and talk about traditions that are so boring. In my family, we're barely Catholics. They're like, Natalie, why didn't you ever get confirmed? And I was like, who was that important to? Because it wasn't me. Like, why? Why would I go to extra church classes? I don't like being there to begin with.
I Yeah, religion for me was never really pushed upon. I was devout growing up. My brother was not. And the ironic part is, as an adult, my brother is fasting. Like last night at dinner, Jean and Steve were like, you know, did you do you observe fasting with for Ramadan? And I was like, no, I don't. But as a child, I did. I did it, and like some of the months, like the way the Muslim calendar lands, it's always shifting, and so sometimes it would land on these warm months, and it'd be such long fasts, and so you'd be so grateful when it was um a short month. My cat ran away when I was in high school, like for a month, and he came back, and I had promised Allah, I promised God, I was like, if you bring him back, I will fast for 30 days, and I did it. And he came back and I fasted like the month of December, that upcoming month, just because it would be shorter days. But I did it because I believed it and I was so devout. I was never much of a pray 5 times a day kind of Muslim. I did do it when we lived with certain family members or we were with family, like extended family. I would do it. I would pray with them because they're praying already, so I might as well do it. But my family never was really that strict. My dad was never much of a strict religious person. So I feel like I got kind of like the lucky end of the lucky end of the spectrum where like I had cousins who like their families made them pray 5 times a day. They made them feel shame about everything. It's a very fear-based religion, in the sense that everything, or maybe it's not, I don't want to, let me just clarify by saying there needs to be some sort of intersectionality that's talked about here because being Muslim in maybe like Egypt or Marrakesh is different than being a Muslim person in Pakistan. So I just want to overlap that with saying that like that's an important thing to kind of observe just because it could be like a lot of different factors. And I don't want to put all of it onto Islam because that's a little unfair. However, there is a lot of homophobia in Islam. Period, blank. That's just the way the structure of the thing is. I'm kind of just going on a spiral, but I'm just going to keep talking. Islam is also Islam is a culture that and a religion that hasn't changed. I think it was founded, I don't know, 500 AD. So they believe in the same God as Jesus did, or he talked to, and so did Moses. And for those who don't really know about the religion, it's like the only difference I feel like amongst a lot of the practices is that Prophet Muhammad was the last prophet, right? He spent the month of Ramadan talking to God and transcribing all the things he's learning into the Quran. So the Quran's in 30 sections, and each day was he would go and spend the whole day with him. That's why we fast, because he fasted. It's a way of paying homage to him. And it's one of those things where like we replicate what he was doing, and people often read the Quran during this time, the whole Quran itself. And that's why we emulate it. And the other thing that I want to mention is that like the Catholic religion and Christianity, there's been all these different variations and I would say iterations because compared to Islam hasn't changed. The book hasn't changed since it was transcribed and put onto paper. While I think there's the Old Testament, there's the New Testament, it went from Latin to English, and it's like great, that makes it accessible. However, to a Muslim person that has been done to, you can read the Quran in English, but you're not reading the Quran. You are not reading. You're reading an iteration of it, and the religion has been rooted in that kind of like tradition. And so, we were talking about my mom coming here and having to deal with all those challenges of being a single mom, being an immigrant, being in another country. She came from a place that didn't want to change the way that they did things. for like more than a millennia. It's been the same. So it is very radical to have a gay child who's out because that's not something that she was ever taught about. My understanding about queer culture in Pakistan is that men who are gay still get married to women and then they just freak on the side. I've watched documentaries, I've read, articles, and that's the way society works. And granted, it's not open. It's very much like going to a back room in 1970s and Times Square and you're beating someone probably, but they all return to their own normal lives. Um, because that's the way that it is. It's not really there's no culture of being out and open. The only culture of out and being open is oftentimes just things that are related to the American government, from what I understand. Um, or you're being super radical and you're being ostracized by society. I think in Pakistan, a lot of people do get blackmailed for being gay. Um, it's one of those things where, sometimes people give me the shit of like not being super out and radical, but it's like you have to understand like that I'm going against something that's been the same for so long that it's so different to rewrite something versus like I think the United States itself, just comparing countries, has had different waves of tolerance around different groups of people. And I think that set people up to understand that this is another way that we're going to respect people. The civil rights movement, I think just the way that people have dealt with immigrants growing up. Yeah, I'm just going on a tire. I'm going on a spiral. Is there anything you want me to dive deep in on? Because you're inspiring me to think about all these things in a different way, and it's just coming to the surface. So thanks.
One of the things that I always grapple with is like the immense of time. So it is like a lot of pressure to think about like, well, I'm living as radically as I feel comfortable because when it comes to Christianity, it's like Christianity's the base of the ice cream sundae, and then everyone has their own toppings on it. Like you're just picking and choosing what you believe and what you don't believe. And this Catholic church is open to marrying gay people, but the one down the road isn't. And in Lutheran churches, you could wind up with a woman preacher, but that would never happen in Catholicism. And what it ends up doing is watering down everything because it is a completely different experience to be out and queer when you have a religion that's never even edited the book ever again.
Yeah, it's interesting because like G and Steve asked me last night why they don't feel like I'm that close to Islam, and I had said, "Well, it's because I came out of the closet." That was the first thing I said, and then a few years later, I went on a retreat with Apacho, which is this nonprofit downtown that's for Asian Pacific Islander queers. So anyone who's like falling into that umbrella. And I had never spent that much time around people who were like myself and queer. And I went on this retreat and I met other Muslims who were like practicing. Like I still practice. I do the bare minimum, which is the funny thing. Anyone who is a secular Muslim will tell you the least thing you can do is not eat pork. Like, and I've never eat pork.
Yeah.
That's the bare minimum. So if you're a bad Muslim, it's like you're having bacon. And like that, people would consider you like being the worst Muslim, if anything. It's like, even if I'm gay, I can't eat pork. Like that's the funniest part about the whole thing is like I can have gay sex, and as long as I'm not eating pork, everyone is happy. Like my brother would be probably more upset if I ate pork than he would about me being gay. I don't know how to weigh that, but I really think that my family would fucking lose their minds if they see me eat a slice of pepperoni pizza. It's just funny. But the idea of religion, and I mean, there was someone who was assassinated recently, and he was a queer positive imam in South Africa, and he was gunned down very much like the Luigi Mangione style of the CEO, where there's footage of him being stopped in front of a car, cars coming behind him, and then them shooting him, and that's how they found him. And so there's this aspect of Islam that's so radical, and it's because I think people don't tolerate it well when people go against the grain or the changing it up. And another way of talking about it is the fact that like in Islam there are no figures. Like that's why a lot of like people love like Islamic art because it's all geometric. It's always all the influences of like, you know, you go to Barcelona, a lot of the artwork matches the Catholicism. It merges with Catholicism, and it's like this beautiful new style. But if you go to traditional places like Turkey or even Pakistan or other places like you like anywhere that has been rooted in Islam, all the stuff is just geometric, and so there is no figure for what Muhammad looks like. We don't have a cross that has Jesus on it. If we were to have the shape of a cross, I think we use the crescent and the star. However, we won't ever put an image on it. Like if I were ever went to a mosque growing up and I wore a shirt that even had like an animal on it, I would have to turn it inside out to be in the space because it's no figures allowed. There's no worship of figures. And I think that's part of the reason why I think maybe going back to me being an artist, it's hard to sometimes feel like that you're creating a figure. It's like, it's a sense of like, it's, to some people, I would say that they would consider blasphemy because you're not supposed to create things that people worship in that kind of way.
Yeah. No, I was a young 20, like a 20 to 24 age, when I found out that it's actually disrespectful to wear figures of the Buddha because like most white girls lost. Like me, my mom, and my great aunt were like, you know who we're really down with? The Buddha. And now my mom will call me and she'll be like, I found a t-shirt and I think that this is and then she'll name a culture, but I think it's one of their gods. And what do you think they think about me wearing this t-shirt? I was like, Mom, you're gonna have to do a Google. Like, let me tell you about Reddit. I don't know. I can't know all of that. Look at a picture of the person who created the t-shirt and then ask the person who's selling it. Like,
Right. And also, Mom, are you at like a Spencer's? Because chances are the answer is no. Like, you know, like it's like I don't know where she would be at, but if it's like we always have those East meets West stores in our malls in Jersey, and they always were ran by like those hippie white women with those like big flowy skirts that were always so cool. You would be friends with them, but I'm like, I don't know if you really. Also, is this the plot of White Lotus, like season
yes,
three
it
right now?
is season 3. I think that's why the three white women who are just running wild in Thailand and hating one another. I'm like, my sisters. Yes, I know them. Like, I love them.
Yeah.
They're a mess. Well, and I think that White Lotus is also fascinating because, and I just said this about Love is Blind too. Like when those two women went, wait, you're not a Republican, are you? And she was like, no, I'm an independent, but my husband's registered Republican. And they were like, did you vote for Trump? And she's like, we're not talking about Trump on vacation, are we? And then they were like, ooh, not an answer. And
we all know what that meant.
We all know what that meant. When at the Love is Blind reunion, when they were talking about like how that guy was not a voter and did not ever even see a post about Black Lives Matter. And I texted Julia and Katie and I was like, okay, so I'm just going to say it, like, men don't have to care about voting and like white men don't have to care about like voting and Black Lives Matter. And they always say like, I feel like our religious differences don't matter. I feel like our political differences don't matter. And it's like, well, of course it doesn't matter to you because no matter where the penny falls, you're on top. Like it has to matter to
Exactly.
me. Like,
and guess what? You can like not see color because you can decide when it doesn't matter to you.
exactly.
Like it's one of those crazy things. Like it pisses me off.
I had a friend who was he's partnered to a Black man, and one day we were like walking to park or whatever, and he was like, and it was in like the height of Black Lives Matter and stuff, and he's like, every once in a while, like I want to give it a rest. Like I can't always be in that headspace, but he's always in that headspace. Da da da. And I go, because he has to live in the body that is always affected by it. I go, we as the white people in his life who care about the legislation and Black Lives Matter and whatever, we do just get to have a fuck off day where we watch every episode of Grey's Anatomy. I go, he doesn't have the luxury. He has to worry about the effects of whether or not violence against Black people is going to end all the time. You and I just get to take naps.
Yeah, another way I can say something or add to it is like people remind me that I am not white all the time by being like asking me to explain myself. Like everyone loves to be like, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "New York City, next question." Like, like, what are you really asking me? You know, like, because it's like I've been on this island again 7 times, and like I've seen maybe three South Asian people, and that doesn't include me bringing my own mom here a couple of years ago, but it's like there aren't a lot of people who look like me. However, the local natives like me because I'm another brown person. Like I've always felt seen. They've always given me like I've always felt the love, and I think that they like that. However, there's a lot of old white people here, and I'm on one of the oldest islands, and it's there's like no nightlife here. It's like, so it's a place where you spend most of the days out and then you come home and then you go to bed and you do it again. That's if you're not like, a person living in the service industry here. But going back to the race thing, I think it's like, what's interesting, it's like, even the people, it's okay for, it makes sense for white people to take the day off because they're not faced with the challenges every single day. But oftentimes it's the challenges that are reminding you that they exist. So what I mean by that is like, I gave the example of being asked what to do, but it's another way of talking about it is like if someone one time was like, you got to make sure you check this person's phone. And it was post 9/11. And I remember being like, bitch, I'm on Facebook. Why? Like, I am on Facebook. Why are you asking me to check? Are they asking for you to check my phone? Because she was implying that things can get detonated. And like, this was like on 9/11. It was an anniversary day. And I was taking the bus home. And I remember just being like, wow, like, oh yeah, like that's right. She doesn't know that I knew people in the building too, right? Like, she doesn't realize that like, my the only identity that she can see me as is the only one that she can apply her biases to, but that there are other things, other layers to it that she never understands. And it's a constant reminder. I mean, like we also remember our own childhood and upbringings often defined that too. But it's like I feel like culture reminds you, or society reminds you that you're othered by it. You know?
Well, and I think it's like whenever we're asking, like, where do white men get the audacity? It's like, well, there it is. They've never actually had to be othered in a space, and they've always been welcomed in spaces unless I'm in charge of that space. And like in creative spaces where it's like, women and people of color who are at the forefront of creating safe spaces for creatives, a lot of times that is also still open to cisgender heterosexual white guys. And I'm like, I guess. and but what I end up telling friends a couple weeks in, I'm like, so here it is. We've created a safe space, but who gets the most talking points in? Who feels like they get to command the room? Who gets to feel like they're the natural expert? It's Whitey White Steve over here. And we're also whispering to girls not to get into a car with him. Like, hey, don't take his offer for a ride home. I'll give you a ride home if you don't want to take the bus. Like, never catch yourself alone with him because we've read it. We're like, I know exactly what your messaging is, and it's not great. But it's like that's where they get the audacity to just take over our spaces because they never have to think beyond, well, of course I belong here. Duh.
Yeah. Or I have to prove that I belong here, as in like using my talent or proving to people like they can just be in a space because they feel like that's the way they've always felt, right? Going back to White Lotus, like the oldest brother is sort of trying to instill this to the younger brother of being like, hey, like what are and like learning about the family's lineage from Lucius Malfoy, like learning about the where his background's from. Like I understand why the eldest son is such like a fragile white man. It's because if he's not strong, he's seen fragile. Like if he's not, and it's going back to like I think Euphoria was the show that did this the best. Like of all the shows, like you watch Jacob Elordi's character kind of melt and fall apart because we find out his dad is, fucking a trans person that he goes to school with who's underage. On top of that, he is this like man who's seen as the alpha and he has to live with this privilege of being the alpha. And I think that humanizes the role, but I mean, I think it makes us have empathy, but also some sort of like maybe a layer of sympathy because you're like, oh, like the system that these men are grown into who don't want to live this way have sometimes have it thrust upon them. Cause like, again, like he's a tall man, he's white, he's supposed to be the athlete of the school. And I remember that scene where he's walking through the locker room being like, Dick, 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 I hope mine is fine enough. You know, I remember being like, oh, wow, like, okay, like he also deals with these issues. However, every single thing in the world is meant for him to feel good about it.
Yes. Yes. And it's just, well, and we as queer people, you're a person of color, I'm a woman, like we're so used to making them the authority. So I like, except for me, because I love to just scream about it. So I'll watch people in these creative spaces just like go, well, of course you're good and I should mirror my work to yours. And I'm like, no, actually, that's bad. Reread his thing. Like, that was bad. Like, it's like, do I have to DM you to be like, no, that's not, you just decided that it was the way to do it because he was vocal. Because he just said, like, well, this is how you do it. What? No.
Yeah. I also think that, you know, society for us teaches us that we are not the people to be like, we are in charge and there are spaces that we are in charge of. But I think thinking back to like 90s television where it's always like the foreign person is the one that's making the butt of the joke. Like, you know, there's that like documentary, What's Wrong with the Pooh, or I think it's the guy from the Simpsons. Like, like a lot of like South Asian people are often like desexualized as people. And I think women are sexualized as people in general. And so I feel like it's like those are the little things that you really can't avoid that remind you that like we have to kind of find the authority to feel it. Although, and if we don't find it, we're never going to get it. While these people can just like kind of sort of stand in the sunshine and feel it no matter what, you know, like they like because it's designed for them. And I mean these people, I mean white men who are young, I would say, or white men who are old and rich.
But yeah, it's the whole idea of like the biggest tool of the patriarchy and misogyny that I realize is how they use our fear against us. So, like, don't be gay, you won't fit in, and it's morally bad. Don't buy the nice thing, you could be broke tomorrow. And that's how they keep us working. And that's how they keep us in a perpetual state of, is what I'm doing good enough? And then I feel like we do just not care about our passions and instead click clack on the computer for our tokens. That's what I told my dad my job was. I go, he's like, your job doesn't matter to you. I go, my day gig, grading standardized tests. And I went, no. And he's like, why do you do it then? And I go, so I can get my Chuck E. Cheese tokens for pizza. Like that, we're all click clacking for tokens.
Yeah.
I'm going to move us to our closing out ceremony because we're at 15 after the hour. So, if you had to have a lesson out of your lifetime growing up in the household that you grew up with, and then also being queer, what would you want to let people know? Like your big RuPaul lesson?
I would say my lesson would be to stay curious. And that is an umbrella question to understanding why you feel a certain way and exploring that, whether it's positive or negative, scary, exciting. And I also think as I'm getting older, it's so silly to say this because it's something that you like are taught from the womb, but you're never really, I think, in society's shown that you can do it, is to ask for what you want. Hawaii is a fucking crazy place. I was going to the nude beach that I go to every year that I'm here. And then on the way, the hike down to the beach, um, I was like, I guess I'm going to be naked on the beach. I forgot my anklet because I'm always never naked. I'm
Yeah.
always at least wearing an anklet. And I'm walking along the shore and there was a piece of like litter or something. And I always just pick up a piece of litter if I see it. And I walk up to it and it's literally an anklet or a bracelet made of wood. It's beautiful,
Oh
just
my gosh.
sitting there. Like I was so shook. I obviously picked it up. I wore it immediately. It's something that I'm wearing. It's in the bathroom right now, otherwise I would show you, but it was just so strange. And I think that's another perfect example of that. It's happened to me so many times in this place. And people, because of the way that this is the vortex energy here, the way that the winds move around the island, that everything gets heard sooner and everything gets addressed sooner. There have been times where I was at a store and I was going to buy this sun hat, and it was like, you know what, this is a piece of garbage. I'm not buying it. And then I've gone to meet friends at the beach, and there was one literally tucked underneath like a root that must have blown away in the wind. That that was crazy. Like those kinds of things have happened to me here in the most insane ways. Like I one time had wished for a massage. I want to get a massage on an island, and then GNC took me to a dinner with her friend, and they had guests, and one of the guests was a masseuse on the island that's been there for like 40 years. Like
Stop
that
it.
kind of crazy things. And so my lesson is to reinforce it is to say the things you want out loud. It's great to wish them, but to just say them out loud is a way for you to be like, I'm going to make those things happen. And the way the world around you works will make it happen. I'm a firm believer in it. Um, I'm going to keep talking just because I can. I
Okay.
feel like just religion and ideas to talk about religion and ideas too is that like I don't know, I think that I would tell people and my younger self that like we grew up in a really faithful environment, and I'm the product of being a Muslim person just because of where I was born and who I was born to. And I feel that people feel that way about themselves when they're Catholic. You were born Catholic, you were devout. And so the way I feel like I recognize and be with religion is that I feel like I'm a funnel. Um, and I'm funneling it all through me. I am not a higher power. I don't feel like I am God. I feel like a lot of white men maybe feel like they're gods. I feel like a lot of people maybe, regardless of what your ethnicity is, can feel like you're the ultimate power and decider. I'm a kind of opposite of that. I feel like I'm a channel for all the energy. So, I'm on this island where people believe in Pele, who is the goddess of I think fire, and Kane, Kne. Kane is the goddess of like creator. He's the god of creator. I mean, Kane is a man. And Pele is a woman, and there's a lot of other ethnicities, it's a polytheistic religion here. And for me, or any other Muslim or Catholic person, they may feel like that's not the right way to believe in God. And I'm like, who the fuck are you? Because this island has been around forever, and these people have beliefs that are rooted in their own truth. And so why would I ever minimize that? I feel like for me as a person, I'm supposed to channel that, whether it's good or bad. I want to channel the good stuff through me so I can put it back out in the world. And so I think that's the way I feel. That's something else I would say is like, people may have these different faiths. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. I think it actually feels very xenophobic and maybe monotheistic centered if I said there's only one God and it's Allah or Jesus Christ or Muhammad and being a prophet. I think that's kind of fucked up because it makes it feel like everyone else doesn't is wrong, and who knows and who can believe in that. And so I think kind of reinforcing this idea that I'm this funnel is like if people are talking to me about their practices and their faith, I want to make sure that I'm channeling the good parts of it so it goes through me and I'm putting it back out in the world the right way.
When I came up with my own witchcraft because I was so sick of misogyny and Christianity and all of it. And I was like, but I want to meditate and I want it to matter and whatnot. That's what it was. I was like, I just want to be tapped into the actual energy that surrounds us.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Yeah. Tapping
But
in. I use the word funnel because like Julia Cameron, she does the artist way.
I've done the artist
She
way.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
the one who gave me the idea of it because she was like, "You are a creator. You are not a capital C creator." And I was like, "Ooh,
Ooh.
are we reading Wicked right now? Like, what is this? Like capital letters? Like what?" Yes, that's what I'm reading. Wicked is the book I'm reading, and but that's what I'm feeling like. Oh, you're not channeling creativity. You're not creating anything. You are channeling creative energy around you and you're funneling it through you and you're putting it out. And I feel like that is how I'm feeling about religion too, which I'm not sure if anyone else has written or talked about it that way, but it's really just come an understanding of just like, I don't want to feel like anyone else's religion is wrong. I don't want people to feel like their religion is wrong because that's what you grew up with by being where you were in
Yeah.
your own life. That's where your family decided what your religion was, you know?
Yeah. Speaking of energy, what manifestation do you want to put out into the energy, to our collective energy?
Um, I want to manifest a creative life that feels fulfilling. I also want to manifest a life that I'm getting to be unapologetically myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something I'm always constantly dealing with. You know, coming from an Eastern family where your identity isn't just me.
Yeah.
I'm not a gay person. My family has a gay person to everyone else. That's the way it feels. And so it's always a harder way for me to feel seen because I'm nervous that it hurts the people that everyone else sees me with. And that's a deep down thing. And so I think I would like to manifest that I'm unapologetically being myself and being able to put things out in the world that people can see me and get to know me from instead of having to show them instead of telling them who I am.
Yeah. I used to think that I wouldn't do anything like write a book or tell my story like I do on the podcast or anything until my dad was dead. Because I'm like, well, I know how he's going to react, and it's going to be emotional and exhausting. And then one day I was just like, during the pandemic, when we all put down our mask, I was like, I don't know, fuck that. Things keep happening. Like, I should get to
I
talk
need to do
about it.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad they did that. I think, you know, sometimes I feel the same way about my family. Like, it's about like my mom being the one who has to carry the brunt of it. Like, I feel like a part of me thinks I'm worried that my mom is going to get shit for me being the gay person from the rest of the family. Um, but she humbled me really quickly because I have new cousins coming to the United States that I have never met. And I was like, Mom, what are they going to think about me? Because they're going to be spending time with family that's very homophobic, and I've ostracized myself from them. Like, I pushed them away, they pushed me away, and my mom was like, your cousin is not worried about you." And I was like, "Okay, but my whole entire life, you made it seem like they were, you know, like, but like it was freeing for her to say that. She's like, they're not worried about you," and I was like, "You're right, because I am the most amazing one of all of them, so they shouldn't be worried about me because they can't even be better than me."
Exactly. Yeah. Hassan, I'm so glad that we got to do this. And I'm going to tell you what I told Chris, I think, when we recorded the This Is Us. Or no, Chris just texted me. He's like, is it weird that I miss you? And I was like, no, I feel like we should be having family phone calls.
Yes, you
Yes,
are family. To quote you, you are family. I think that's how you said it to me the first time.
I did. When you
Or
were,
you said it to your family. I think Chris was telling me that you had a conversation with your own family to remind them that I'm family to
yeah,
them.
to them. Because you were so nice. I had made friendship bracelets for this California trip that I crashed. And you were like, are you sure I should have one? Like, I'm not in this group, nor am I a sugar
Well, the
cookie.
cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, you're my family. We just had a beautiful day at the museum. I've never,
Yeah.
like, you know, when people's souls just connect, like you were so humble the entire day. Like, thank you for letting me. And I've started like thanking my sister for letting me come along with, like, she took the kids to the park yesterday. They didn't have to call me, but I got to be at the park with my nephews because the sun was shining. Like, I've been saying things like, thank you for letting me be a part of this. And it's because of you.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah. So you are family. We should be having family phone calls. Do you have anything to plug before I let you go?
Anything to plug? If you haven't read Wicked the book, I'm rereading it as an adult this time. It's fascinating. If you to quote Natalie, if you like horny, what was it? What horny
Munchkin orgies.
munchkins? Yeah, horny munchkin orgies. I mean, it will pull you in. However, the book is very similar to what we're living through. I think it's been interesting to reading it. Um, I also would plug I make music playlists all the time that are very journalistic. You can find them on Spotify, or you find me on my social media through Natalie. You can, it's variety of music that you may not find yourself. I would also plug Going to Touch Grass. Get out, put your phone down, go look at a bird and realize that birds are all fashion. Every
Yes.
bird is fashion. Like that is fashion.
Yes. And tolerators, you can find us at Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram and Natalie K124. Just plug it into a social media and see if I'm there. um, and remember, tolerator Hassan, thank you. I don't know if I actually said thank you or if I just screamed at you. We're family and we should call one another more. Like I'm your great aunt. Like, hey, family, call.
Yeah, family. You're my family, and I'm honored to be here. And thanks for to the tolerators for, you know, giving me a place to come and talk about things that I don't ever really talk about. So
Whenever, wherever, as the great Shakira said. Remember, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including wanting to belong so hard and getting so many subliminal messages that you just don't. Smiles are for joy.